of course, President Trump, after saying 2 weeks, said, I said within 2 weeks.
Right.
Within 24 hours, drops the midnight hammer, as they're calling it. And look, I'd say I'm incredibly impressed with this. Watching the rollout of it, look, it's not that it doesn't make me nervous, not that I don't have feelings and thoughts about whether we are at war or not with Iran. Obviously, the main line here is saying we are not at war with Iran. We just went in and we took out 3 of these top enrichment sites. And that's good. Incredibly impressive from this team. I really think when you have somebody like Pete Hegseth, when you have Marco Rubio, and you even have J.D. Vance, but you have those two, I think those two together are people who have been through it, who understand it, and clearly can execute a mission that, again, there were no leaks. No one knew it was happening. It happened before we knew it was over. Even so much so that the news wasn't even covering that there was this sort of major attack in Iran.
Well, and after that statement of within 2 weeks that we got at the end of last week, the mainstream and liberal media decided to have a field day with that. They were writing story after story and having monologue after monologue about how when President Trump says 2 weeks, that means he's trying to get out of something.
You forget about it.
In fact, The Atlantic published a piece around 9 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday, the very day that then a few hours later we discovered and were told that these strikes had happened, by David Frum, that says, what Iran knows about Trump. The mullahs of Iran joined the bet that Trump always chickens out. And we saw that that wasn't the case on Saturday.
You know, even if he hadn't done it, to say chickening out when you're talking about dropping bombs, I don't think it's chickening out. I think it's negotiations. It's going to the table. But of course, that is not what happened. You did have these precision strikes that happened. Sorry, I'm pumped up this morning. And now the outcry has switched. Of course, now those that were protesting with their Palestinian flags are now running around with Iranian flags. Again, fundamentally missing. No one, I mean, you can't find even a Democrat that would probably tell you they may not like that we did this, but saying, man, Iran is the beacon of freedom. No, of course not. They've been under a terrible regime for many, many decades. Look, great people, great history, great legacy in Iran. I would love to see it turned back into what it was, if not better. And maybe that's where we're headed. We're not sure. But look, if it was to take out the imminent threat of nukes and war that could happen, look, we'll have to see how this plays out in a week. We'll see if it plays out in a month, in a year. You know, hindsight's always 20/20. But I do think this was the right move. And then I think President Trump came in definitively, strongly, made the statement, and it actually brought a little bit more comfort to my family to hear what he was saying. Again, not saying we're going into war, saying we were going in to stop war, essentially. Let's hear from President Trump.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success.
A spectacular military success. Now, we are still awaiting sort of the full damage. We've seen some of the overhead images. You can definitely see that tunnels were taken out. A lot of things were taken out. Some of the buildings may still be standing. But again, at least we know they went in and took care of things. And of course, Iran has responded. They've started to make some moves. That we've obviously seen some issues in Israel already, kind of uptick once again in Israel. And that's unfortunate, but we kind of knew that that was probably going to come.
And once again, those 3 nuclear sites, Fordow was the most fortified. That was the one that was
the one we knew the name of.
200 or 300 feet down in the mountain, built in a very specific way to try and shield it from someone trying to take it out. That one will be the one that takes the longest to assess what damage it did to the actual vault that is underground where they carry out these nuclear enrichment
Marco
capabilities.
Rubio was like, yeah, we know that, because why would they be building this all underground?
Right, exactly.
If you didn't think it was being used for nefarious reasons, why do you think they decided, we need to build this hundreds of feet down?
Well, and once again, Iran,
300 feet.
Iran has an operating nuclear power plant in that provides a large amount of electricity to their people. You know how much of their enriched uranium from this program they spent billions of dollars on, and all these secret bases and all these sites, how much of that enriched uranium is used for that nuclear power plant?
How much, Will?
Zero. Not a single bit. It all comes from Russia with an agreement. And then Russia takes the depleted cores back to Russia. So they're not even trying to do it for civil purposes, creating a better energy grid for their people. No, they are doing it for one reason only, to get to 90%, to put on a warhead, to get to the United States or Israel or anyone else they feel like they need to blow up. And they are crazy enough to do it.
It was a big weekend, one that, I was at dinner, I believe it was on Friday night. And someone said, hey, what do you think about this 2 weeks thing? Do you think it's really 2 weeks? What's it going to be like? And I said, I don't know. It could be that it is 2 weeks. We wait and see. And it could be that stuff happens tomorrow. This could be something just throw them off the scent a bit. And of course, by the time we had made it home, I feel like from dinner, the answers were there.
Yeah, well, look, the scope and nature of this is very significant. And that is, number one, the president, acting under Article 2 authority as the commander-in-chief, authorized a military strike that had been well thought out for over a decade and well executed. And a huge thank you to our men and women in the military that were involved in this. What a tremendous victory for the United States military. But also, this is a world-changing moment. And I think the thing to reflect on right now is that this moment in history, the world will change. And it will change because it has the real potential now, for the first time certainly in your lifetime, and I think mine as well, that we could see a total reshaping of the Middle East. We saw the beginning of that with the Abraham Accords. We've seen the continued security cooperation between Middle East countries, including Israel. The Arab world, for the most part, wanted to see an end of the Iranian regime. That nuclear threat was not something that anyone in the region would tolerate, but it took the Israelis initially and the United States ultimately to conclude a military exercise that literally makes the world safer for my grandchildren. And I will tell you that's what I've communicated to our leaders, that they have changed the world with God's guidance. And President Trump gave God the credit for this. With God's guidance, we saw a sea change move here that I think, Logan and Will, we don't even know the extent to where this could go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there has been this sort of push over the weekend, and they're pulling up a lot of old clips showing, hey, look, pretty much every president has said Iran was the threat, that they could not get nukes. This is from Obama, from Biden, even from Kamala Harris. They said, who's the number one threat to America? And she said, I think your first one you'd have to say is Iran. But of course now it's people taking to the streets because President Trump did it with Iranian flags.
You how absurd this is. First of all, the Iranian people, by and large, they don't want to carry the regime's flag. That's not where they want to be. I read a lot of data last night, just political data from inside Iran, because the Shah of Iran's son is the crown prince, the crown king, really, of Iran. He said it's going to be up to the people of Iran what the government should look like. But he's the leading force for the opposition. And they reported that upwards of 80% of the populace, not just people under 45 or 50, but the populace of Iran want the Ayatollahs out, want the theocratic regime out. So I think you could see, it's going to be, the Iranian people are going to the Persian people are going to have to be the ones that mobilize. But that's how you ultimately see a real regime change. When the people are behind that regime change, it makes all of the difference. They were 14, 15 years ago during the Green Revolution. Unfortunately, President Obama would not back those students. But this is a different president and a different time. And again, huge thank you to President Trump for making the difficult decision to execute this operation.
You put out a statement over the weekend that called this a Churchill moment. The decisiveness by the president and the obviously the outcome that can come from this. But one thing I think that makes this different and why it's easy for those that want to criticize the president have the luxury of doing so is that typically American foreign policy, when it's come to bad actors like this, have been reactionary, waiting until after they have done something like Pearl Harbor, or you think of even 9/11, where threats were known, but then we waited to confront the evil until they had carried out something that cost a heavy price on American lives. This is a threat that every president, regardless of power or party, have said cannot happen. And it is just now that a president decided to do something about it. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, but it wasn't simply the president deciding to do something about it. This president said he will not allow in his watch a nuclear Iran, and they were very, very close. Even the IAEA, as you all have talked about on the broadcast, the International Atomic Energy Commissions, all of those organizations recognized that Iran was enriching uranium for weapon purposes. So that's number one. Number two, the president has been crystal clear on this. Yeah, I listened to some of the media on the left and said the president was deceptive. He was deceptive by saying within 2 weeks. He was deceptive by sending out the other B-2s towards Guam. Deceptive? That's called military tactics. That makes our men and women safer when you're executing a mission-critical event, which this was. But you know what? Here's the good news. Iran has nuclear capacity, has been significant, if not totally eliminated, so significantly crippled, it will not come back. No one's going to allow it to come back. And I think you could see again, I think regime change, if it arises within the people of Iran, the great Persian Empire, if it can arise there, you could see a real change for the betterment of the entire world.
We also know that Iran has said they will retaliate. We're seeing them also rush to the international bodies like the UN. We know that it's a different FBI than it was just even a few months ago that will focus on protecting the homeland, keeping Americans safe. But I want to get your thoughts on the international bodies, places that the ACLJ is active and working, as now we see the Iranians rushing to the UN Security Council. I can only imagine they may want to start reaching out to places like the ICC and things of that nature to try and go after America. What is the role of even organizations like the ACLJ at a time like this?
First of all, Danny Danone, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, was unbelievably great on the floor of the UN. He gave a great statement of what was really at stake for the world. We're already activated. As people know, when it came to the attack on when Iran attacked the civilian hospital in Israel, we immediately engaged our team. We're working very closely on the ICC matter at the highest levels with Professor Dershowitz. And, we'll see what moves take place, but our teams are already reviewing everything as it relates to what the next move here. But I think the UN's going to be hard-pressed to, frankly, Will and Logan, I think the UN's going to be hard-pressed to do anything. But we've mobilized our teams. Of course, you're getting this broadcast, and I just encourage everybody, support the work of the ACLJ. It also is mission-critical.
We are so excited to announce the ACLJ's brand new app, completely redesigned to provide you with the best tools available to partner with us at the ACLJ. You can watch the daily Secular program, sign the petitions, customize your ACLJ membership experience, donate with the click of a button, and receive up-to-the-minute critical updates that the mainstream media can't censor. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to your phone's app store, search ACLJ, and click install. It's that simple.